Here's something that's really gotten the rumor mill turning lately. Several insiders are now backing up a report that originally came from Alex Perez over at the Cosmic Circus, and it's one that's got people both hyped and a little confused. According to The Scoop, Spider-Man 4 may be bringing in none other than Silver Samurai as its primary villain. That alone is a wild idea, but there's more. Apparently, VIPER, also known as Madame Hydra, is expected to be a co-lead villain in the movie as well. Now that's big. Not only are we possibly looking at the return of two key figures from the Wolverine, but we're also diving deeper into the underground world of Hydra and all the twisted connections that come with it. If you're wondering, yes, VIPER and Madame Hydra are actually the same character. It's just that they've been presented under different names depending on which version of Marvel media you're looking at. VIPER, whose real name is Ophelia Sarkissian, is deeply tied to Hydra's history in the comics, and her relationship with Silver Samurai, it's already been explored before, like in the Dark Reign storyline, where she breaks ties with him to reunite with Baron Strucker and Hydra's ruling council. That's also when she gives up the Madame Hydra mantle for a while, and Valentina Allegra de Fontaine steps in wearing some pretty intense robes and a tentacle-covered headdress. And the story only gets crazier. VIPER ends up getting kidnapped by Leviathan, a shadowy organization desperate to uncover the secrets behind a mysterious box both she and Madame Hydra got their hands on from the Yoshidas. In a brutal twist, Madame Hydra actually turns on VIPER and shoots her dead. But of course, in classic comic book fashion, that's not the end. Hydra arrives and the Hive resurrects her, now giving her tentacle appendages coming straight out of her head. From that moment on, she fully reclaims the title of Madame Hydra. Following the Fear Itself storyline, she aligns herself with Hammer, joining Norman Osborn's efforts after he escapes prison and briefly takes back control. Even after Osborn and the Dark Avengers are taken down, Madame Hydra holds on to the leftover resources of Hammer and starts rebuilding Hydra in the shadows. She's not just some hired muscle or secondary villain. This is someone with a long game, deep strategy, and serious influence. There's a great moment in the comics when she tips off Spider-Woman and Hawkeye about Mr. Negative's planned heist on a S.H.I.E.L.D. warehouse. But while they go off chasing that lead, she pulls a fast one and raids another facility, stealing a bunch of captured Skrulls left over from Secret Invasion. That's the kind of Mastermind-level move she's known for. And then there's her attempted raid on Avengers Tower while the team's away, where she ends up getting taken down by Angel and his younger time-traveling self. It's wild stuff, but it just shows how deep her involvement in the Marvel Universe really is. She's never just lurking in the background. She's often 5 steps ahead, making moves that won't pay off until way down the line. So if Marvel really does decide to bring her into Spider-Man 4 alongside Silver Samurai, that opens up a ton of possibilities, not just for Peter Parker's next adventure, but for tying into broader themes like Hydra's history, the mutant connection through the Yoshida family, and maybe even touching on espionage-related arcs involving characters like Valentina or Sharon Carter. Now, a lot of people are wondering, if both Silver Samurai and VIPER already had major roles in the Wolverine, doesn't this feel like a retread? Isn't Marvel just recycling villains instead of coming up with something new? And it's a valid question. That movie already featured both characters prominently, and if you're doing Spider-Man 4 in a grounded street-level style, why pull in characters from a mutant-centric film? But there might be more to this than it seems. First off, let's clear up the naming situation. Back when the Wolverine was made, Fox held the rights to VIPER, but they couldn't legally call her Madame Hydra. On the flip side, Marvel Studios had the Madame Hydra name locked down, but couldn't use VIPER or her full backstory. So what we got back then was sort of a hybrid version. Now that all the rights are under one roof, Marvel can use the complete version of the character however they want. That means they're no longer limited in terms of what parts of her backstory they can show, and they can fully tap into the Hydra side of things. If she really is in the movie, Marvel might be using her to expand on all the Hydra breadcrumbs we've been getting since Captain America the Winter Soldier. Maybe this is finally how we see the criminal network re-emerging in a more organized form. And let's not forget, Ophelia Sarkissian isn't just some spy in a trench coat. Her physical skills are on par with an Olympic athlete. She's got incredible reflexes, strength, speed, and agility. She's deadly in hand-to-hand combat, and she's also a top-tier markswoman. Add to that her strategic mind, her global underworld connections, and the fact that she's immune to her own poisons, which she often delivers via hollowed-out fangs, and you've got a villain who's terrifyingly competent. She's used teleportation rings, razor-sharp claws built into gloves, and venomous darts. In Extreme X-Men, she even had clawed gloves and employed teleportation tech during fights. So if they bring all that into the MCU, imagine what she could do in a more grounded, gritty Spider-Man story. And speaking of the Wolverine, that film really doesn't get the love it deserves. It's actually one of the better entries in Fox's X-Men catalog, especially in how it explored Logan's grief and isolation. The way they portrayed VIPER in that movie was solid. Sure, it wasn't a fully fleshed out version of the comic character, but it was stylish, deadly, and leaned into the snake motif in a cool way. So if Marvel Studios is now planning to use the full Madame Hydra version in Spider-Man 4, it would be a great chance to flesh out that character more, tie her into current MCU events, and give her some narrative weight. They could even take a creative spin. Maybe this version of VIPER is related to Valentina, or maybe she's trying to take over the reins of Hydra from the shadows. There's room for a fresh take, even if some elements echo past films. There was also a time when fans speculated that Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, who we now know is forming the Thunderbolts, might actually be this version of Madame Hydra. That turned out to be not the case, but Marvel could still connect those dots. They could say Ophelia is Valentina's rival, or maybe her mentor. They could do a story where Hydra splinters again, with different factions fighting for control, which could tie into the Thunderbolts, Armor Wars, or even Captain America Brave New World. What really matters is that if they go this route, they do need to do justice to her power and threat level. Don't just make her another manipulative villain behind a desk. She's hands-on, lethal, and capable of operating both in shadows and in open conflict. If they nail that balance, she could become a major figure in this next era of the MCU. So while I'm personally excited, especially as a fan of both Silver Samurai and VIPER, I still have questions. I'm trying to wrap my head around how these two villains fit into Peter Parker's story. How does Spider-Man even get involved with them? Are they going after Oscorp, Stark Tech, something tied to Krakoa or mutant genes? There are a bunch of different directions they could take, but it's still not totally clear how it all connects. That's the tricky part. I don't want to hype myself up too much without knowing how solid this report is, but if it ends up being true, it could turn Spider-Man 4 into a surprising crossover of multiple Marvel subgenres: mutants, Hydra, espionage, and street-level heroics. And that's a mix we haven't seen before in a Spidey film. So we'll just have to wait and see how it unfolds, but if this is really happening, count me in. And that's that for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.